shell structures. So the thing in Pinocchio are both made out of inanimate objects, and that's something that is what voodoo dolls could enact. Or there's two other ones that are actual. And the argument of value goes as such: if you're eliminating a face from a diamond or crystal, then it's going to have a lesser value. Earlier we saw a picture of a crystal having 5 sides like a dice, but it was stretched out uneven. It has a certain angle on it that would be equal to how a degree would act on a unit circle. And if you have a correct measurement, it would be one majority of platonic shapes to equal itself as a canandroid. And this is a form of your body as an absolute function if everything was perfect, but it isn't. But the crystal dynamic of being able to take one face away and still have 4 other, taking 2 faces away of the faces on the crystal in this diagram, then it's less and less of a different category of a majority of platonic shapes to even out what it was prior, because the faces were destroyed, meaning they're not there anymore. So in the Leatherface horror movie, he takes the epidermis off your face. You'll probably still be alive, but if you take the next layer, now you're interfering with your brain being inside your skull, because if you take that off, there's a barrier of empty space. And so if that second layer is gone, if your head was a crystal, then that is equal to 2 layers being destroyed, and you're not able to survive at that standpoint. But you could, the first layer gone. So that's a compromise of how your body would succumb to an event equal to getting layers taken off. So what I was describing earlier is a whole bunch of different types of metals, glasses. For the thing, it's like he's made out of rocks, so that's sediment. This is all crystallography, Christology, and that deals with all of those materials and even includes drug design. And why that's important is that there's patents on drug designs, because that's one of the ways a pandemic beneficiaries account for their earnings if they have a patent that handles the bulk of it. And the argument of value goes as such: if you're eliminating a face from a diamond or a crystal, then it's going to have a lesser value, because it's going to change the majority of its makeup, being less than what it were before. So the majority of the platonic shapes would be irate, so the cellular levels would be less strong, and that's in cell theory, but that's just for things that are not like rocks, unless you're the thing. And then it begs the question in material sense: what is the Green Lantern's exoskeleton? It isn't an exoskeleton of a suit or a fabric of metal, or he makes a material senses become a material object from his ring. So like if he wanted Tony Stark's suit, he could just power up his Green Lantern ring and make Tony Stark's suit, or become the Silver Surfer if he wanted to have Silver Surfer skin, because it's going to change the majority of its makeup, being less than what it were before. So the majority of the platonic shapes would be irate, so the cellular levels would be less strong, and that's in cell theory, but that's just for things that are not like rocks unless you're the Thing. In Mortal Kombat, when they had a Triborg, it changed the game for what an embodiment can be. Venom in Spider-Man is just a fabric of that suit, and it's an alien, almost as if the Silver Surfer was crossed with the Green Lantern, so he could just make flowers bloom up that were liquid, and then he could sawdust them all off into dust, and that dust form would be the third form of his Green Lantern, and Silver Surfer is correlated to like the base of the Power Rangers being one Triborg of the Rangers. Then they zap into lightning like Raiden's teleport, but they're different colors, and that's a connection parallel to what the robot, and then the robot has the face in the tube. That face in the tube would be the second embodiment, and then the Power Rangers are the third embodiment of the Triborg. Is just the base of the Power Rangers. Metallic suit is so thick, so the thickness of the Hulkbuster suit versus the Spider-Man Venom suit is essentially the same thing. It's just with a lot thicker skin. So what defines the character's innards when you have a rock animal like the Thing? AI isn't what JPEG is, it's a different outset. But one thing that could get treated as parent functions of the following ideas of suits and dialects is like how trees are made, or I think it's called like leaves or shells programming, and so that's a form of what AI is. So that would be like a form of how Power Rangers lightnings when they morph is equal to that green tube guy, because he's just energy. The same thing is like the one being, all the Kami Dogagus together, and the gods in Mortal Kombat, like the three of them, is equal to just like one face, and then it's the same as it was. There's one of two objects in my hand. One is litter, the other isn't. But who's to say which one's more dangerous if something's laced on it? There's something. The reason why in the classical passwords of really like good computer people in movies has those hokey passwords is so that they're not defining the thing that they're trying to beat, so they make it like nostalgic. And so I wouldn't want to be like naming a whole bunch of germophobic things, because the oil would be like one way of naturally combating either as a resistant bacteria. And because there's different oils on different parts of your body, it holds as like a knight's armor would on different angles. You know, like what computer science would be great at, coming up with like passwords that are really hokey, like or something about Molly, and then title that, couple it with like Saving Private Ryan. So the two movie titles, they seem like they would be in a movie store together, but from the titles there's names in it, so you could utilize both as a password. It's like the classic passwords of hackers when they come up with stuff like that. Of like 7 fluids, and then there's like 7 chakras. If there's like more than 7 or less fluids of Hippocrates or whoever came up with chakras, that's okay. The main point is that the definite amount, they both came up that they're such. And with platonic shapes, now you've got like 3 categories of what could be utilized to make the oil of a body like a shield. But just if you get your nutrients right, it'll act like it would push up it extra to combat anything like a hay fever or a swine flu or a bat virus. So understanding one of those as animals would allow like an extra defense mechanism be mapped out and it sounds like holistics, but it's kind of more like numerology of the three. And a summation of different numbers that articulate the layers of a fatality versus you being able to withstand a detriment. Loyal is one because you can count that as a layer and everyone. But what if someone has a disease where they don't have oil on their skin that comes up? That's just as likely as people who have blood issues where if they get cut, their blood won't stop because it can't heal without hemoglobin. If I messed up that last part, I meant like